Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast. Oilers Live Podcast.
All right, take your seats.
Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here for another edition of Oilers Live, Tuesday nights. Tonight it's post-game Philadelphia Flyers, 3-0 shutout win for our favorite goalie, Mr. Kassian. Probably the best goaltender signing we've made in the past 4 or 5 years. All right, we've got as our guest somebody we haven't seen in a very, very, very long time, Mr. Sean Patrick Ryan, formerly the OilKnight on Twitter. Welcome back, Sean. How you doing?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. I'm doing great.
Good, yeah. Well, I mean, you got to be happy. I think you're still an Oilers fan, judging by the background. It's been a long time. Happy to see you. Lots of people are excited that you're on the show today, and hopefully we get some interaction online. First, where you been?
I've been around. I haven't tore down my Oilers stuff just yet. I kind of took a step away from hockey for a bit, and I feel good about it. I'm starting to slowly, now the baseball season's over and football season's over. Well, baseball season, who knows what's going to happen there now. But,
Yeah, it could be over for a while. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But, I just kind of needed a step away, I think, just from online in general. It was a lot of work. I was doing a lot of pro bono stuff, as you know, and it got a little exhausting. And then I'll probably touch on it a little bit as we go. But there's other things that just kind of annoyed me about the NHL and the Oilers in particular. So instead of being a toxic fan and just being constantly negative and just adding to that part of Twitter, I kind of felt like it would be best to maybe just step away for a bit and, just let everybody else kind of duke it out for a while.
Well, you know what? It's changed drastically. I mean, everybody's really positive now, and
I'm sure.
Oilers fans we're a happy bunch, and everything's going great. No, you know what? I get it. I do have days where I feel like that, and of course, the work and that you do to put out podcasts and analyze games and do all those things. Well, I mean, as you know, and I know all too well, it doesn't pay at all, and so it's time consuming and can really take out a lot of your day. But we're happy to have you back, and I've got lots of questions about. I know you're a big OHL guy, and so we're going to have some questions about Tullio and Petrov probably, and we're going to try to fit all this into an hour if we can. If we have to go just a little bit over, if you have time, I'll let you tell me when. But let's first talk Oilers game tonight. I've got my thoughts on the game, but let's hear your thoughts. I haven't heard them in a long time, and love to hear your thoughts on the game tonight.
Well, first of all, I should be honest that the first part of the season, I didn't even really watch the games. I bet you I watched 2 or 3 games in the first 15 or so.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a perfectionist, especially with my blog and all that. I mean, I'm usually all or nothing.
Yeah.
So when I decided to kind of take a step away, I really took a step away. I just stopped watching. I stopped writing about it, stopped worrying about the prospects, all that stuff. I still follow the OHL because that's kind of my baby. And, but yeah, once Tippett got fired, then I said, okay, now maybe I'll kind of tune in again and see how Woodcroft is going to do. Because I was never a big Dave Tippett fan, as you know. I was calling for his head for like 2 years at least.
Yep.
I'm so glad he got fired. Maybe we can talk about that later too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that for sure.
But yeah, I mean, so watching the game tonight, well, first of all, my dad's a Flyers fan. He's just absolutely disgusted with the Flyers. They're just, you could tell even tonight, they were just so sloppy, taking just undisciplined penalties and really just giving the Oilers plenty of opportunities that they didn't necessarily earn. But I think I think one of the issues with the Oilers in the past was they always struggled against garbage teams. Like we saw them play really well against Florida and Tampa and Carolina. So then the question is, well, how are they going to follow that up against, a bottom dweller? Usually that's when they struggle, right? But I think they did a good job for the most part. It's tough when you take a power play right early in the game, or you get a power play in the game. Sometimes it kind of throws you out of your rhythm.
Yep.
And they looked kind of stale there. And I think that kind of affected them for a bit. But Koskinen was outstanding. He's been good for a while. And I really like, I like what Hyman really brings to the team. And I thought he was excellent tonight. He's, I know they're missing Nuge and they're missing Puljujärvi, but he kind of brings a bit of that grit that I wish guys like Puljujärvi and Hopkins would have a little bit more. And he seems to have good chemistry with McDavid and Draisaitl and that. So I kind of felt like he makes a real difference. And I think he's going to make a difference in the playoffs as well. That's one thing I noticed. And I thought Bouchard was pretty good for the most part. I know he struggled a little bit recently and people are starting to get on him, but I thought he played pretty well. But overall, I think it was a good game. It's a game they were expected to win.
Yeah,
technically, but we both know that that's with the Oilers. There's never any game you can expect them to win. So I think it was a good team win. They played well. They played pretty good defensively, but again, Koskinen kind of stole the show.
Yeah, here's my thoughts on the game, because a lot of what you said I agree with. I thought the Oilers played well. I mean, I thought they played well enough to beat Philadelphia, but the game they played tonight, they would have got destroyed in Carolina or Florida or Tampa, I thought.
Yeah.
I feel for your dad as a Flyers fan, because to see some of those missed opportunities that the Flyers had tonight, that's the definition of high danger. Like almost tap-ins that they were missing. Like, I just don't know. To me, that's a confidence thing. I mean, there's the players that are missing those tap-ins, are any other time in their career, they're putting those in, right?
Yeah.
And so, we're coming down to the wire for that team in terms of trade deadline, and it's going to be a different team in whatever 20 days or whatever it is, 21 days.
Yeah.
So I could see that. It's just that they got to have a better effort, in Chicago. I think, like, I felt the Oilers did well enough just to win tonight, like that, against a team that is struggling and missed some good opportunities. But look, hey, one thing that I've loved, and this seems to be the case since Woodcroft came in, is McDavid is still just flying. Like he's given, this is the best I've seen him all year, this sort of stretch of 10 games.
Yeah.
Like he, and I always think this sometimes, like when I watch him, we've got 10 games and he's getting, a couple points a game or whichever. But it feels like he's in a slump. You know what I mean? Like he could have scored 4 today, right? Like, he had that one where he drove down, sort of took his shot, and then got the rebound. One of these nights he's going to connect for 4 or 6 points here soon. It could be Chicago, who knows? But he's outstanding. I thought Draisaitl, like, I'm noticing, everybody notices the giveaways he does, but he's got to, I was hoping that maybe Woodcroft would kind of help with that a little bit, but it just hasn't seemed to happen. A couple times tonight he gave the puck away, at inopportune times. But I love Draisaitl. Like, it's hard to get too upset with that guy. Nice that he gets on on the goal scoring piece. And then what do you think of Bouchard and Keith together?
I didn't see Keith out there a lot, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not 100% bought into everything, so I'm more of I'm casually watching. I'm not as analytical as I was before. I didn't notice Keith a lot. Maybe that was just me not really paying attention. But I want to say something about one thing that has become quite apparent to me. Just kind of stepping back and looking at everything objectively. I really feel like, and I understand that Draisaitl kind of has, the giveaways at times and that. But the more I think about it and the more I watch him and McDavid and, and Matthews and that, I mean, I honestly feel like, and I'm not just blowing smoke here.
Yeah.
I honestly feel like Draisaitl is the best player in the league. I think he's better than McDavid. McDavid is the most explosive player. He just attacks you with speed, and his stick handling is unbelievable. But in terms of, who's the better passer, who's the better shot, is the better goal scorer, I think that's kind of where McDavid struggles a little bit with the shot. Like that goal that Draisaitl scored tonight, he just walks in from the blue line and just casually rips it top corner, right? Yeah. Like it's nothing. Made it look so easy. And just it's funny to me how, when he first came into the league, how he went from more of a playmaker and he turned into a 50-goal scorer. He kind of morphed into that type of player. And now he's really a complete dominant two-way center, right?
He legitimately makes the guys around him better, right? Like there's no out of those three players. I mean, Matthews hasn't had the opportunity, right? Like he's just always played with good players.
Yeah.
But Draisaitl, it doesn't matter which line you put him on, chances will happen, right? Yeah, you got no argument for me. I think the giveaways I struggle with those, but I think it's a fair argument.
I mean, Michael Jordan missed 50% of the shots he took, right? And he was still the greatest of all time. Kind of the same idea, but I just kind of think about like just like look at McDavid and look at all the natural ability he has. Mm-hmm. How easy it is for him to just get his own entry and just skate and do the stick handling. But for Draisaitl, it's so much harder. He's not nearly as gifted athletically as McDavid, so he's got to push himself that much more to get up to that level and to stay at that level. And the fact that he's put up the numbers basically the same as McDavid over the last 4 years, the fact that he's been able to do that consistently, despite being, half the athlete or has half the natural ability as McDavid does, I think you have to take that into consideration. And like I said, I think he's great defensively for the most part when he wants to be. He has his lulls where he starts to tire. And I think a lot of that had to do with Tippett too.
Utilization, right?
Utilization.
Yeah,
exactly.
100%.
Right. But I think, if you just look at the overall playoff stats, Draisaitl's the better, more productive player in the playoffs so far. Yeah. To me, that kind of matters. I just think overall, if I were to take one player, and I know it sounds insane, but I appreciate his game so much. Just the overall, the face-offs, the defense, like some of those. What was it? I saw there a couple weeks ago. He made that cross-ice backhand pass
to McDavid.
Assist. Was it to McDavid or Kane? I can't remember.
Yeah,
it was just unbelievable. And I don't think McDavid can do that. And when Draisaitl came that goal he scored tonight, he just walked in from the blue line and just ripped it top corner. McDavid can't do that. McDavid gets by on his natural ability. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking McDavid. As far as I'm concerned,
I get that.
He's the second best player in the NHL by far. I think those two combined are amazing. I feel like Oilers fans don't necessarily give Draisaitl enough credit or consideration. I think I saw somebody today when I was from my burner Twitter account. Somebody did. It's not hockey related, but people do retweet things sometimes. Somebody was comparing Matthews to McDavid or Matthews to Draisaitl. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like Draisaitl was clearly the better player.
So it was only a few days back. Funny we should have this conversation. I put out a series of tweets about like and you and I had this conversation back when Draisaitl scored 50 goals and just about won the Rocket Richard against one of the greatest goal scorers of all time, right? Ovechkin.
Yep.
And I thought that he was the least lauded 50-goal scorer ever. I thought that, like, the following year, it was like Draisaitl still never existed as a 50-goal scorer. Like, people just still weren't talking about him. And I don't think people talk about how great a goal scorer he is. And you could, and you know, when I bring that up, people, you know, will often get on me and say, well, you're just being, you know, this Oilers fan, boo-hoo, we're not talking about Draisaitl. But it's legit because everybody wants to talk about Matthews or Ovechkin or whatever. They completely bypass, or, you know, if the Oilers are coming to town, it's McDavid's coming to town. Here's a guy, here's the stats. He's had 4 straight 30-plus goal campaigns, 6 straight 20-plus goal campaigns. One of those is he's one of 5 50-goal scorers this decade. He's consistently in the past 4 or 5 years been in the top 3 scorers last 4 seasons. He's 3rd in total goals for the past 5 seasons. And then add in the fact, right? So all of that, you take all those guys that scored as many goals as him over the past 5 seasons, and he has 100 more points than them in that time.
Yeah.
So he's not just a goal scorer, right? Like he is, and he plays the PK, right? And he plays the power play, so he's a special teams master. The guy picks more pucks out of the air than anybody I've ever seen in my life. Like you know, every time a puck flies by me in hockey, I always think I'm going to try to do the Draisaitl and pick it out of the air, and I never, you know, one out of 100. But he's like almost 50%. Like you got to be damn good to like feather a pass by him. In fact, the other night he turned to the
like this.
Yeah, and stopped it.
Yeah, I saw that. He wasn't even looking, and he hit it like that. Yeah.
Like I mean, I've never seen anything like it. And yet, you know, it feels like we're still arguing about whether or not he's meant to be in the top 5. I mean, for sure, people are starting to notice. I just still don't think he gets the credit he deserves, given the fact that he's, you know, when people will say, well, he plays with McDavid. Okay, when he won the Hart Trophy, McDavid was out of the lineup, right? Like, and he resurrected Yamo's career, right? Like he, you know, anyway, you got no argument from me. The giveaways do kind of annoy me, but you know what? I mean, that's just being a fan, and you watch any giveaway is going to drive you nuts.
Well, Erik Karlsson was awful for giveaways.
Yeah.
And look how many points Erik Karlsson put up, right? He was the best defenseman offensively for years there. But I mean, just to finish that point, you could argue too that Draisaitl is the least athletic out of all those guys too. Matthews has a better shot. McDavid has more speed, you know, but somehow he still manages to be right on par with them or ahead of all those guys. And it's just through sheer determination, hard work, and his hockey IQ. And I think if you put the total package together and you just evaluate every single skill in a hockey game, he would be number 1 for me. Yeah. But I love McDavid. As you can see, both jerseys are hanging right there.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it's an academic discussion, right? And,
yeah, exactly.
I mean, he is, I just think it's hard to say this, with a straight face, but I think Draisaitl's somewhat underrated, rather, right?
Yeah,
like still,
I agree.
Still,
yeah.
I suspect guys that play on the team with him wouldn't say that at all. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Dry all night. Your guy Bouchard. You know, I want to talk a bit about him. I know you haven't been watching all year. I think he's had some really solid goes throughout the year. He's had a stretch of bad games, but I think he's a young defenseman. I mean, you look at Cale Makar, he didn't come into the league till 4 or 5 years. He went and played college, and then he was probably eligible 4 years prior, right? Before he came in. How old was he when he 22, 23?
Yeah, I'd have to check.
But, you know, I mean, I'm not, before anybody jumps on me, I'm not comparing Bouchard to Cale Makar. because Makar is definitely, he's a special player, and Bouchard's a special player. How good do you think this Manson Woodcroft thing is for a guy like Bouchard? I mean, you've watched Bouchard. You watched him grow up in junior.
Yep.
You've seen some pretty amazing things. I'll always remember, though, he wasn't your pick that year when the Oilers took him. You wanted, I think it was Buckfist, if I'm not right.
No, Dobson.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's a hell of a player too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, there are a lot of good defensemen in that draft here, if I recall.
Yeah.
What's your thought on him? Has he progressed? I mean, obviously you haven't been watching necessarily all year, but from what you've seen, has he progressed the way you've expected? Do you think anything you could say? How do you feel about this Woodcroft sort of Manson thing? And where I'm going with this is the other night he had probably one of the worst nights I've ever seen him play. It was in Florida, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he must have given the puck away 6 times, half dozen times, in some really sort of awful. Like if Koskinen hadn't had one of his best games of the season, Bouchard would have been. They would have been burning pictures of him in the streets of Edmonton, I'm sure. But Manson kept putting him out there, and. You know what? That. I didn't mind that at all, right? I mean, part of me is like, man, I'm a little bit scared, but at the same time, that is not a Tippett style, and we both agree on Tippett. But I really that's where I'm going with this. I mean, how do you feel about this Woodcroft sort of Manson thing and Bouchard's development so far?
Okay, so I think the struggles he has right now, I mean, aren't a big surprise. If you recall, when he was drafted, I did write an article there for the Cult about patience is needed with him. And I kind of highlighted the defense was an issue and probably going to be an issue when he gets in the NHL. He is more of an offensive defenseman, right? Again, I referenced Erik Karlsson earlier. Erik Karlsson gave away the puck so many times his entire career. There were just bonehead plays, right? But you're willing to overlook that if the offense is there. And I think eventually he'll kind of get there. I felt like at one point I saw somebody mention something about he had 9 goals and the rest of the entire defensive core only had 8 combined. So he had a good start to the season.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like when Woodcroft took over, and that's when I really started to kind of, focus on him and the team a little bit more. He did kind of seem to struggle. I think obviously there were some system things that changed, and for whatever reason, he kind of struggled a little bit with that. Maybe he was overthinking and it was affecting his decision making. But again, I kind of think back, ultimately the comp I had in his draft year was John Carlson. And I remember John Carlson for years. Yeah. He struggled defensively. He would put up points offensively, but he still continued to give the puck away a lot. Another former Londonite. So I kind of see the similar path with him. I'm not too concerned. Especially under Manson and Woodcroft. One of the biggest pet peeves I have in hockey, and one of the biggest knocks I had on Dave Tippett, is he really, really limited growth for his young players, and he really punished them whenever they made a mistake. Tyson Barrie could go out and give the puck away 10 times a night. It didn't make a difference. Chris Russell could do whatever. It didn't really make a difference. But Bouchard is playing on the left side. He hasn't done that since junior, and he rarely did it in junior. He makes a couple mistakes in one Leafs game and he's benched for 3 months. Shit like that just pissed me right off. And that doesn't help the player at all. And I think if he would have played, if the coach would have had some confidence in him and gone back to him, like they did the same thing with Sam Rukov. He had an awful game, and good luck. You're probably never going to see him the rest of the year too, right? And that you can destroy a young player's confidence right then and there. And I feel like Tippett did the same shit with Ethan Bear and Caleb Jones too.
100%.
Right?
Yep. 100%.
Look how Niemelainen and Lagesson are playing, how they're playing under Woodcroft. Well, Jones and Bear were better than they were in the AHL. So just imagine they were still on the team with this coaching staff. How different would that have played out, right? So as far as Bouchard goes, there's going to be growing pains. Again, he's never going to be, as everyone can probably tell by now, he's never going to be real physical. He's just not a guy that's, he's not big on clearing guys in front of the net. He's more of a stick checker. You just kind of have to live with a guy like that, an offensive player like that. I still wish they'd give him more offensive opportunities last year so he could kind of just start the season as the power play specialist, PP1, and have that experience from last year. And it'd be a much easier transition. They've kind of bounced him around back and forth. And I think he's kind of struggled a little bit with that. But ultimately, I think he'll get there. He's a smart enough player. He gets it. He still makes a lot of poised plays. The Bouch bomb, I think he needs to work on his accuracy a little bit. Yeah, because it is getting blocked a lot. So that's an adjustment you'll have to make. But ultimately, I think he'll be fine. Fans have to be patient. I've heard some Justin Schultz or Jolts comments now. They're starting to come in. I'm seeing that. I really hope it doesn't get to that point. People don't jump all over him. You should learn by now that, trying to run a young defenseman out of town because they make mistakes, especially an offensive defenseman, it's just not a good idea. These guys take time. And one last thing I just wanted to mention is Barry Trotz played Noah Dobson as 19? He played 18. He was 18 or 19. And he played him limited minutes. He would give him minutes. He would make mistakes. He would still kind of go back to him. Then if it got a little bit too overwhelming, he would dial it back a bit with his ice time, but he didn't bench him. He didn't bench him for, a couple of games or weeks or months. He would go right back to his guy. And he's been with the team for a couple of years now. And the coaching staff just slowly gives him what he can handle. And if not, they dial it back and then they just keep going. Yeah. And I know Bouchard had some opportunities on the power play and they took him off. That's really how you should be dealing with a young player. There's going to be ebbs and flows, especially defensemen. You got to be patient. But Bouchard has the talent. He has the IQ. He'll get there, but he's never going to be great defensively. So you're just going to have to kind of take a bit of the bad with the good.
Yeah, I mean, he's a half point a game player right now, right?
Yeah.
In what is his rookie year, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is not too bad. I mean, you can't. He is our top point getter in terms of defense this year, and you're right. He's made some mistakes. I think, you need that patience. I really, as I said, while, it made me cringe a little bit in that Florida game, I was happy to see. I watched for it. As soon as he made a couple big mistakes, that's what I was watching for.
Tippett would have benched him.
Yeah, well, yeah, he would have been off. And I've talked about this on the show a couple of times. There's a thing that that I felt like with the Tippett era. You got guys like Samorukov who'd come in, who have potential to be an NHLer, right?
Yeah.
You come in, and his utilization that game was against what was the top line in the league at the time. Like that was who he went out. He played 2-3 shifts against the top line in the league.
Wasn't he partnered with Bouchard at one point?
Yeah, and he was partnered with Bouchard. And he's going to get run, right? Like that's his first ever NHL game. He's going to get run. And then he goes and he goes out there and he then he gets sat for the rest of the game. And so the way I feel about this is guys talk, right? Mm-hmm. Samorukov doesn't go back to Bakersfield and tell everybody how much he loved playing with Tippett and Playfair. Right. And, that's not what happens. Right. Like that's how. So he goes back and who does he talk to? He sits on the bench with Lagesson. You think Lagesson loved Tippett? No. Right.
No.
And so these guys, they start talking about that. And then when they come up from Bakersfield to play a game, I mean, they're already gripping the stick a little extra tight. Right. Whereas, you got guys like Woodcroft and Manson come in, and I think that they're liked. They're still the coach, right? Guys know you still only get so much rope, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at least they know, they've got they can make a mistake and get a chance to come back from it. I mean, how many times you watched a game and the color guy who's played NHL says, I really like what, Coach Trotz is doing here, bringing Bouchard out again or whoever, Dobson out again after he made that mistake, right? Like giving him the chance to make it right. That's what a good coach does. right? And that, and then
For sure.
and of course, if you only get so much leash in the NHL. I mean, obviously, if you get that ability to make the first couple mistakes, and if you make too many, then you'll be sent down. That goes without saying. But I do like the way this team is coached. What did you think about about Woodcroft being the guy? I mean, I don't think they had much choice at this point, but
right.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that I've been I can't get out of my head. It kind of feels like, and to be clear, I am not a Ken Holland fan at all either. Another part of the reason why I kind of left Twitter, it was a combination of things. Obviously, the Kyle Beach thing just disgusted me in Chicago. Never owned up to that. And then when in the OHL, when that Logan Malou had all those issues, and he said he didn't want to be in the draft, and then Montreal ended up taking him in the first round anyways. I thought that was disgusting. That should have never happened. And then, of course, Tippett just shows no confidence in Barry, makes a mistake. He sits him for most of the game. Then he throws him out, and then he's racing off the bench, and then we give up the game-winning goal. Tyson Barry's trying to get back or needed a break. And then there's racist comments towards Ethan Bear, so he gets traded. All that stuff just completely disgusted me. I think the entire, I feel like the whole thing had to be blown up. The coaching staff, which they did, but Ken Holland definitely needs to go as well, in my opinion. But at least they got rid of the coach, and now there's a little bit more opportunity for growth. And it's funny how as soon as Woodcroft gets in, he brings up all these guys from the AHL. Benson's playing more. McLeod's got more of a role. Niemelainen and Lagesson, and they rip off 5 wins and they compete with the top teams. I mean, he's got a system, and he's all about giving more opportunity, which is great. He did have a little bit of history with Holland, so I'm not surprised that Holland did end up giving him an opportunity because he has had success. But I just can't get out of my mind that if the Oilers don't go very far in the playoffs, and as of right now, I would say just due to their goaltending, even though Mikko's hot for a couple of games, unless they do some of the goaltending and they improve defensively as well, I feel like they're not good enough. They can't compete with these top teams. Colorado and St. Louis are just going to run right through them. I feel like they'll probably keep Woodcroft in the organization. They'll probably just put him back in the AHL. But it really seems like a no-brainer move. And really Ken Holland's last move is to bring in Mike Babcock to save his job next season. And the reason why I think that is just look at what Daryl Sutter's doing to Calgary. And Daryl Sutter's an old school blue-collar coach. And look how well Calgary's doing. And Ken Holland can look down in Calgary and say, you know what? If Daryl Sutter can do that to Calgary, I know Mike Babcock. Ken Holland he's still stuck in the 90s, the late 90s, early 2000s. He always talks about Chris Chelios, which just blows my mind. I can see him just envisioning, you know what? I've won with Babcock before. If Daryl Sutter can do it, Mike Babcock can do it. So that's his next play if the Oilers don't go real far in the playoffs. So I like Woodcroft. I like the fact he's given the young players opportunities. I really hope the Oilers do well here. But I think ultimately, as of right now, they're going to fall short, and he's probably going to get sent down, and we're going to see Mike Babcock in Edmonton. That's my prediction right now.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong. I think I think you hope you're wrong as well.
Yeah, I do.
That line of thought never crossed my mind until now, but it completely makes sense.
Yeah.
And the Sutter thing is what would make it make sense, right? I mean, he is, he's watching Sutter have some success with the team that I think if you put the rosters side by side at the beginning of the season, you would have taken the Oilers roster, and if you say otherwise, I think you're lying, right? Like, I mean, everybody thought the Oilers would do better than Calgary. But Sutter's turned them around. Okay, I've got. I don't want to sit and talk too much about this Babcock thing because that would probably ruin my night.
Holland doesn't have another play.
No, he doesn't have another play.
What else is he going to do?
Yeah.
If they go out, if they bow out, he's got to blame himself. He already fired the coach. So what else is he going to do?
It would
He's
be a
gonna-
shame if they did that to Woodcroft. It would be a real shame.
Bobby Nicholson is all Team Canada, everything. He'll sign off on it for sure.
Yeah.
I could see it.
All right, we've got some people, some chatter, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Let's see here. We've got Shannon says on Facebook, Manson will turn Bouch around. I believe he's going to be a very reliable D-man on this team. Yeah, well, it's I think. I mean, we talked about that. We'll see what happens. I mean, we can't expect him to be, stellar D-man. He's going to always be an offensive guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Having him and Tyson Barrie on the same team is just redundant too.
It
never even got
100%.
That was stupid.
It was maybe one of the dumbest signings. I mean, and there's been a couple, but that one was 100%. Neil on YouTube says, can Malone replace Archibald? I'm going to answer this quick, and then I'll get your opinion. It's one game, right? I think, a guy like Malone comes in one game, he's going to have a little bit of grit to him, to stay in the lineup. Archibald, love him or hate him, the guy hits like a tank. In the playoffs, a guy like that would be good. We'll see what happens. I thought Malone played what you expect of him to play, a guy that's been called up, and he hasn't played in the NHL for, a couple of years now, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, and look, those guys that play in the AHL like that, like they're tough as nails, right? Like that's a tough league, right?
Yeah. He hadn't scored since 2015.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a tough league. So Rick asks the same thing, what you think of Malone. I think he deserves another game. He played well enough to get another game in. For sure.
Yeah, I will say when Archibald does come back, and I don't know what's going on there because I haven't really been following, but I don't see any point Zach Kassian been on this team, especially under Woodcroft and Manson. Archibald comes back.
Did you see any point on Kassian being on the team earlier this season?
Not really.
No. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's all the more reason. Yeah. In fact, Kassian's an interesting case because it's one of those, when he does come back from injury, like, what do you do? Like, that's one of those contracts where you have to put him in. And he's also, I'm certain he's a well-liked player on the team. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, I've got nothing to say otherwise, but and that makes a difference too. Shannon says, "What's your thoughts on tourists with the team?" And Archibald's in quarantine right now. I think Archibald hated Tip. Hope he gets his ass back here.
Archibald's the guy you want in the playoffs.
Yeah, he definitely. I was telling this story last show. The biggest hit I've ever been witness to live was Archibald. And I actually didn't realize it was Archibald until after, but I was sitting down ice level. It was the same game.
Calgary?
No, it was Philadelphia and Edmonton, and it was the same game where McDavid had like 4 Philadelphia players hanging off of him, and he still scored the goal. I was sitting about 4 rows up behind the penalty boxes, just off a little bit by the blue line. Actually, right on the blue line, like I could see the video. Normally, I hate sitting there, but for that particular game, it turned out to be a good thing. And literally, like I thought the boards were going to fall over. That's how hard he hit the player, and it just like reverberated throughout that whole side of the arena. And I didn't even realize until he was skating away. I'm like, holy shit! Like that was Archibald. Like that guy's like he's 2 feet tall.
He's a 170-pound wrecking ball. That's what he is. Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a tank. He's a tank.
Yeah. Neil says Archibald refuses to get vaccinated. I'm going to suggest. I mean, I think that's a big deal, but I do think that come playoff time, that's not going to matter a lot. If everything carries on the way it has.
Right.
We'll see we'll see what happens there. All right, let's switch gears. I mean, it's hard. We talked a little bit about the game. There's not much, analysis in a game like tonight other than, the Oilers came out, they played probably the right game. Koskinen played a good game, I thought. And, Chicago, to me, this game only means something if you come out and have a similar outing in Chicago. Otherwise, it was, doesn't mean anything, right? You got to piece together wins, especially this time of year. Let's talk about a couple of players. I'm sure you've been out, I assume, to some Knights games this year, have you?
I haven't been, no.
Oh,
I watch it. I watched majority of them.
Yeah, I watch most of them. And I've got a couple players I want to talk to you about. Not all of them Oilers related. By the way, I got Moosehead season tickets, so I've been out to most of their games.
Nice.
And actually, they're doing quite well.
Yeah.
And Gritty team, we'll talk about them sometime, maybe off air. But it's been fun. I'm enjoying the queue and that. And of course, I'm going to try and get out to the Memorial Cup in St. John when it's out here.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's not too far away. But switching gears, let's talk about Ty Tullio, of course, and Matvei Petrov, 5th and 6th round picks. Potentially the best 5th and 6th round picks the Oilers have had in a very, very, very long time, and coincidentally in the same year. Let's start first with Tullio. I mean, is this kid for real, for one? And do you think, he's picked in the 5th round for a reason, right? Is that reason still valid, or was it just, timing? I mean, what's your thoughts on him?
I love Tullio.
Yeah.
He was one of my guys even before the draft. He was picked a little bit lower, and to be fair, there were a lot of OHLers that went lower. Yeah. It was a weird year where a lot of random U.S. high school players were being picked just because the team owned their rights longer, right? That was a big thing. For Ty, there was not, because it's going to be the same throughout his career. He's considered a little bit smaller and not the fastest guy. But I'm a huge fan of him. My comp on draft day was Brendan Gallagher. I watched some of the Oshawa game tonight. Tullio scored again. Ty got it's actually his 9th goal in the last 9 games. Nice. He scored in the first period. Just kind of banging away in front of that. He's got such quick hands. He's a Gallagher clone. He really is. His numbers were pretty much exact in his draft year. Same size, right hand shot. He is such a pain in the ass to play against. He's got a strong work ethic. He's not afraid to get physical. I've spoken to people around him recently, and his body fat, he's like 6%, 7% body fat. Like he's a bit of a gym rat. He's just, he has all the tools. He's got that determination, but he's also got that elite skill he can hang his hat on, and that's his shot, right? He's got an unbelievable shot. And that's one thing that Edmonton is really, really lacking. Although Hyman and Derek Ryan seem to have pretty decent shots. But before them, there wasn't really anybody up front that you would consider that had a big shot. Yeah. But now that Lavoie is in the organization, the Oilers, I don't know what in God's name, what they were doing with Maximoff. Just talk about ruining a prospect or not giving him an opportunity. But we won't go there. But Savoy is another prospect, great shot. Tullio and Petrov, who we'll get to as well. He can also really rip the puck. So I think he plays power play. He plays penalty kill. He can do everything. He's a complete player. He's not afraid. He'll hit bigger guys. He'll fight. He'll stick up for his teammates. And he's got that elite skill and hockey sense, really. So yeah. I think he's going to be a great fit for the Oilers eventually. He might be another guy like Holloway that plays a year in the AHL, whatever first. But I think fans are going to love and appreciate his game because he brings it every night and he gets under the opponent's skins big time. Yeah,
it's awesome. I've only had the chance to watch him the one time the other night, CHL game of the week.
Oh yeah,
there when they were playing the Frontenacs. Hey, is Sport Major still around? Is he still writing for them? You talked to him?
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah,
No.
I think he was writing for the Frontenacs for a while. Yeah, I mean, because he would, he probably is still around. I'm guessing. I haven't interacted with him much. Of course, Caps, when the Capitals are in Stanley Cup contention, you hear more from him than otherwise. But
Marcus. Yeah, you're talking Marcus.
yeah,
right?
Marcus. Yeah. All right. Let's. So the guy that Tullio's chasing in the points race happens to be Matvei Petrov.
Yeah. So yeah, Tullio was the year before Petrov.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think they're pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think
Points
Petrov
wise,
was. Petrov's 1 point more than Tullio. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Petrov. I mean, well, there's two things. Well, first of all, Edmonton has an absolutely awful history with Russian prospects. Like, I really want to go on and on and on, and I know we're pressed for that.
Yeah.
The whole Maximoff thing drives me crazy because they never gave him an opportunity in Bakersfield. He had the most points in junior since McDavid, and they never put him in the top 6 or power play in the AHL. Okay,
and they
fine.
invested money in him, right? Like they were sending
Yeah.
skating coaches. They were doing, like they invested time and energy into him, and they never gave him the opportunity. I agree.
I never understood that. And then there was COVID, and they sent a lot of their prospects overseas. They didn't send him till like September, and they sent him to Siska, and they already had a full roster, so he only played 8 minutes a game. Like, what are you doing there? And then he went down to the VHL, and he lit it up there. He was like the best player. You can ask Spencer. He was like the best player in that league. So then finally, I don't know what happened again with COVID, and now it's training camp, and he comes back. He's experienced. He's already played in the AHL. He's one of your highest scoring prospects in the past year. I would assume he's going to be top 6 for sure in the AHL. No, we're going to send him to the ECHL over guys I've never even heard of. Some guy named Matero makes the team. Like, that just blows my mind. And then Samorukov gets called up once, and then he's thrown in the AHL, and see you later. He's probably never going to get called again. So I am a little leery when it comes to these Russian prospects. But having said that, just based on a skill set alone, Petrov is, I mean, he's, I think the word you would probably use for him is dynamic. He's very dynamic. He has great puck skills, and he has a terrific shot and just that offensive skill and IQ. Like, he's a natural scorer. I think one of the knocks on him was his speed, but his speed is completely fine. He's got strong acceleration and that. He's a little deceptive. But his 200-foot game needs work defensively. Typical Russian style. He's not the most reliable in his own end, but he's got that offensive upside that is definitely intriguing for sure.
I mean, he, I've watched. He's had a couple of hat tricks this year, and he's got a pretty decent shot too, and not just goal scoring, but he's made some beauty plays and some sort of subtle type of plays, right? Like the nice little dump in at the right possible time or whatever, like just good hockey sense.
Right.
The stuff that I've watched. You put out a highlight video of him just recently, and I thought it was great. I mean, I've been watching him for a while. Eric Friesen did an article on him for Heavy Hockey that I thought was really good, and so I've been kind of really interested in this player. And unfortunately I haven't been watching the standings in the OHL. Do either of them have a chance? Like, is North Bay or Oshawa, or either team going anywhere this year?
Yeah, Oshawa's about middle of the pack.
Yeah,
they'll definitely make the playoffs for sure. I thought they'd probably. I know they were thinking about going all in and making a lot of big moves to try and make a push, but it was tough with COVID for so long that they didn't know what was going on, and the league was going to be shut down or what. But I mean, one thing you should note too, I guess, with Petrov, he does play with one of the best players in the OHL. I think right now is Brandon Coe. Brandon Coe is like a 6'6" centerman. A lot of those highlights you'll notice that I put out for Petrov, he's always with Coe. So it's kind of a 1-2 punch. So a lot of times that can be misleading a little bit. But because those two really do feed off each other. He really is a dominant player in the OHL. But North Bay's up there. They're one of the top teams in their conference for a bit. I do have the standings as of right now, and they're third in the conference, although they've played a few more games than Kingston. So they're top 4, and Oshawa is fifth right now in the same conference. So they'll both make the playoffs for sure. And who knows, they may eventually meet each other, those two teams.
Yeah.
But North Bay's they've been garbage for so many years. This is the first year. And you should know too, like Petrov was highly, highly regarded coming the OHL. Like he was the first overall pick in the the import draft.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a lot of hype around him. So this isn't just some no-name guy that's just having a big season. He is, he lit it up in Russia before coming over. So he's got the scoring pedigree, but it remains to be seen how that translates to the NHL. Obviously, he's got to round out his game. But yeah, they're both of them are very intriguing prospects. I think they have a legitimate shot of making the Oilers one day.
Yeah,
which is great value for where they were drafted.
Yeah, I mean we've had some decent players in the system. In recent years, Holloway, obviously we're waiting on, and I mean, Oilers fans want to rush him in. I think he's still a little ways away, but I mean, he didn't play the whole season. He comes back, and a lot of guys calling for him to be called up right away, which I thought was kind of funny. And you know what? The Oilers have been doing all right with the guys that Woodcroft's putting in the lineup, right? And finally Benson's getting a bit of a chance. And I love, I actually, that's a guy I'd like your thought on. I know you didn't maybe get to watch him as much as some guys in the East. Benson, of course, growing up in the Dub.
Right.
But I know we did talk about him way back. Here's a guy that, was, I wouldn't have called him a gritty player ever. But he's playing with a little bit of grit. He's changed his style of play. From the amount that you've had a chance to see him. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, is this a guy that can stick?
Well, I followed him a lot, like all the years leading up.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
In the AHL, he was gritty for sure, especially on the boards. He was a chippy player. But I mean, and I used to always do my end of year assessments, and we did it kind of like a mid-year assessment as well of all the prospects. I mean, I got to be honest, I was never really high on Benson. I feel bad because the injuries, I think, really kind of took a toll on him in terms of his development. And you can tell whether people want to admit it or not. And it's funny, people try and defend it. He's clearly not a great skater.
He's awful.
Anybody can see that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's one of the things I love about Twitter. You can put out an argument about anything. Somebody can't score, for example, and or him, for example, he can't score in the NHL. He scores one goal, and then it's like, see, what do you have to say now? Like it's like everything you've mentioned up to that point. It means nothing at this exact moment. Yeah. Well, with him, the speed is an issue, and it's because he's not going to be able to separate or generate a lot because he's not going to break away from anybody, right? You'll notice the plays he does make, he's typically standing still. He doesn't make a lot of plays off the rush. It's along the boards or in a stationary position. He has great vision and he can and passing ability, but it's in the NHL game, he's not going to be able to create enough offense to be a top 6 player. So could he carve out a role in a bottom 6, carve out a career in a bottom 6 role? Perhaps.
I think he's changed his game enough that there's a chance.
Yeah. And he definitely deserves the opportunity to prove people like myself wrong. Absolutely. Give him all the opportunity in the world.
Yeah.
I think ultimately he's a fringe NHLer. I was a little bit surprised that they brought him back, but time will tell. I like betting against people like that and them proving me wrong. That's one of the most satisfying things, especially just evaluating product or prospects in general. So I hope he does well, but to answer your question, I don't think he's going to be there long term.
Yeah. I mean, he's obviously the just the fact that he's from Edmonton, right?
Yeah.
Holds a little bit of sway with the fans, and it'd be a good news story, I think, for him and for the team if he does, as you say, prove you wrong and does something about it. I think the games that he's stepped in, he's done what's asked of him, and
Sure.
you got to respect that. And that's what this team needs. I mean, we're, I don't get it, but again, leading the league in man games lost, or right up there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, there's something to be said about that, to still be nearing a playoff position and, be way up on the man games lost piece. Obviously, COVID didn't help and all those things. Whereas, a team like Calgary, they're leading the league in no losses to injury. Like, they haven't had a major injury all season, other than maybe Shillington's probably down for at least a couple of games. I actually haven't followed up on what I don't know if you saw the he went almost head first into the boards the other night. I only watched it once because I couldn't watch it again. It looked pretty bad, but he might be out for a bit.
I didn't realize he was on the team.
Oh yeah,
He was still there.
And he's been playing well for them. He's been a good for Calgary, and So, I mean, Sutter's changed that team around, which surprises the hell out of me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's something about his coaching style that is getting the best out of these players. I'll be a believer if on YouTube, Neil says Shillington played tonight, which is amazing because I couldn't, as I said, I couldn't watch the replay more than once. It was pretty brutal. I don't think it was a dirty play, but he got sort of tangled up with one of the Minnesota players and just got almost like a slingshot into the boards. Didn't look like he was going to be getting up. So the fact that he's playing again. Anyway, Calgary. So Calgary and Edmonton are on both ends of the man games lost spectrum. And of course, as soon as Calgary had any COVID cases, they canceled all their games. Edmonton kind of like weathered through one or two main players out. Whenever they never really had until they canceled for everybody. So I think that's, there's something to be said about that. And guys like Benson need to come in. I think it makes a difference that you got a guy like Woodcroft who the players like, right? They'll play for, right? And you got a system that my thought on Tippett, as I've, developed it over time, is that he's fine. He'd be a better coach without superstars. You know what I mean? Like he's the kind of guy.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you take Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl out of the mix, he probably would have had more success.
Well,
but because he's got them, he feels this, and because of the way that he coaches, always depending on the veterans and the overutilization of those two players, because there were no other real good veterans on the team to use, right? Like that to me is what happens. Like, the fact that you got, you're putting all your trust in Kassian, has to tell you.
Devin Shore.
Yeah, and Devin Shore, who's still, by the way, like, which I don't get. And anyway, I mean, I'm done talking about Tippett.
Can I touch on that for a second?
Yeah, sure, okay.
All right, so where do I start with this? It's funny. I listened to a Derek Ryan interview there on the Oilers, and he talked about what the difference is playing for Woodcroft and how their structure and how earlier in the season players didn't know where they were supposed to be on the ice. They didn't know what they were doing, right? And I think that just kind of speaks to how disorganized Tippett was, like in his over-reliance on those two players, as you mentioned. And to be honest, I don't think it would have made a difference, because I think him, much like him and Holland, I think their styles, their mentality is just outdated. Like, to be a successful coach, and this kind of goes for anybody that's coached anything. I don't care if it's peewee hockey. I don't care if it's girls volleyball. I don't care if whatever it is. I've coached baseball for many years, soccer. There's certain coaching basics that that just translate at every single level. Things that coaches should absolutely, if you want to be successful and win at any level, there's just certain things you have to be good at and do. And obviously one is to be prepared. And quite often, the Oilers look disorganized a lot of times. They weren't prepared to play. They weren't ready to go from the puck drop. Be a motivator is obviously another thing, key for a coach to get the best out of your team and to motivate them. And I think he struggled there as well. But I think, and this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves with him, I think you really need to be successful, a successful coach. You need to be honest about your roster, but you need to be able to put players in the best position to succeed. And too often, you would think after they lost the first playoffs, the first time when they went out in that first round, you would think he would have learned his lesson that, you know what, I can't just rely on Draisaitl and McDavid this whole time because it didn't get me anywhere. So in order to be successful, you got to build up the rest of your roster. You can't be a one-line team. Like that's not going to work. Just ask, Colorado how that works. You can't be a one-line team. You have to be a balanced team to be successful. So then last year, the same thing happens, and he's over-relying on, Nurse and Barry as his top pair. He's not playing anybody else. He's benching guys throughout the year. Everybody's in and out of his doghouse. He wasn't putting players in a position to succeed. Nobody had any confidence going in, except for Draisaitl and McDavid and probably Nurse. That's it. So he just it's such an outdated style. It's not progressive thinking at all, and it drives me nuts. And Holland's the exact same way on how he's building his roster and making all these stupid moves, signing Barry and whatever. But the thing with Woodcroft is, he's implemented a structure. He understands that, the bottom six hasn't been terrible all these years. It's the utilization of those bottom six forwards is what's really been the problem. They can't identify what they need to do, what their roles are. There's no real structure in place. So what Woodcroft's done is come in, assigned everybody a role. I love how he played the power play too. Right off the bat there, he gave them more opportunity. Yep. He sat Draisaitl and McDavid for a while there in the first game or second game. So they were fresh in the third and gave other guys opportunities like McLeod to build your confidence. If they're going to do anything in the playoffs and go far, Derek Ryan's got to come through. Ryan McLeod's got to come through. Guys like that are going to be the difference maker. Warren Fogle. Those guys are going to be the difference makers. And you can see it year after. Just look at the success the Oilers had. Fernando Pisani. Yep. What line did he play on when they were successful in the regular season? Ethan Morrow. You need those role players. They gotta contribute for you to be a successful team. But you can't just expect them to turn it on in the playoffs. You can't give them, just penalty killing responsibilities all year. And then come playoff time, well, we need you to score. We have no depth scoring. You've got to build them up, build their confidence up, get your team feeling good about themselves, team structure. Everybody's feeling good. So when you go into the playoffs, you don't have one or two hot guys. There's no question marks. Am I going to be playing tonight? Am I not? How much am I going to be playing? Everybody understands their role. Everybody understands the plan, the structure, and you kind of move forward with that. And I think that's the exciting thing with Woodcroft, what he brings to the team. And that's where Tippett really struggled. I still don't think at the end of the day they have enough talent, as we talked about yet. I think they need more defensive help. And I don't trust the goaltending. They're still ranked. I think Koskin's 40th in save percentage and Mike Smith is 51st. That's just not going to get it done. And that's Ken Holland's fault. Again, he should have known that he needs to address the goaltending. And there's been so many goalies traded or signed in the last 3 years when he's been there, and he hasn't been able to pull the trigger on one. And you're getting paid $5 million a year. That's absolutely unacceptable. That's a complete fail from him.
Yeah, and I've talked about this on the show. Yeah, if you're expecting, and not you specifically, but for any fans out there expecting a big Holland trade, just go check out his trade history. It doesn't happen, right? Like it's not.
Well, he did trade for Chris Chelios once. Yeah, that's right. Be the first to tell you that.
That's right. Yeah, I mean he just doesn't have a that's just not his MO, and so And he said it earlier, and I have no reason not to believe him that he's not going to trade a pick, for anything. I mean, I part of me gets that, but then the other part of me is you're either in or you're not, right? Like you're either going for it or you're not. And one of the concerns I have right now is exactly what we're talking about. The fact that Koskinen's played 2 great games back to back. I see the hamster rolling in Holland's brain right now, saying, "Well, I've got Skinner waiting in the wings, right? And maybe I don't need to trade for a goalie."
Yeah.
But we can't trust that, right? Like we've seen enough of Koskinen to know
he's not going to carry you 4 rounds of playoffs.
Yeah.
Right.
Like this is, he goes through these ups and downs, and we're not going to get 4 rounds with him.
No.
So it's a scary proposition for me. Like it was like the whole Tippett thing too, right? Like Tippett started to do well. He had a couple games in a row, and I thought, oh, that's great. We're gonna have Tippett till the end of the season, because that's the way Holland thinks, right? Like he you get on a bit of a roll, and he doesn't see historically what's actually happening, right? Sometimes you can get on a bit of a puck luck roll that doesn't necessarily, like tonight. I thought Koskinen played a good game, but at the same time, there were opportunities that Philly missed, like a good half dozen of them. The Carolina, Tampa Bay, those guys aren't going to miss that, right?
Yeah. Well, and part of that is playing down to their level too, I think.
Yeah.
But point taken there.
Yeah.
Well, what does it say about Holland though, when he wanted to re-sign Tippett? Like he was so close to just re-signing him, and then he ends up firing him, and he's all about letting these players percolate and over marinate or whatever that stupid terminology he was using before. Well, then Woodcroft does completely the opposite of what Holland believes in, and brings up all these young guys from the HL and proves that his bullshit philosophy doesn't mean anything because because Woodcroft can make it happen. But Holland still believed in Tippett, and changing a coach isn't going to do anything. Look at the difference. Just look at the Oilers now. Even Derek Ryan said we're like a completely different team now than we were before, systematically, structurally. So all those people that always say, why would you fire a coach? And, you just, again, there's certain basics that a coach has to have. And Tippett is old school and just he hasn't adapted and adjusted. He's not a progressive thinker. Neither is Ken Holland. So luckily they've got Woodcroft, and so far so good. But ultimately, oh God, this could go still. Holland could just, like I said, if Holland doesn't make a move for a goalie, and then that's what ends up costing them, then that gives them an excuse to get rid of Woodcroft and bring back Mike Babcock. It's just going to get worse. Like it's just, I don't know why I'm getting worked up, because I took a step away from this, but the Oilers are so frustrating. The whole management structure, everything is frustrating with that team. My God.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense why you took a break.
That's why I'm not on Twitter. I would be Mr. Negative for the whole year.
Yeah, no, you know what? I mean, I'm 100% on board with that. I mean, it is the Woodcroft system so far is counter to what Holland has espoused going forward, and he's had success. We've seen slight changes in the system play from a coach that hasn't really even had any practices with the team yet. Basics that Tippett didn't seem to understand. I think what was telling for me was Neil on YouTube says we won tonight, right? Yeah, we did win. We're happy we won, by the way. We're happy we won.
We're pro Woodcroft here.
We are pro Woodcroft. In fact, I do like the direction the team's headed, if they make, the changes that we're talking about. Where was my train of thought now that I saw that comment and it kind of got me off?
Sorry.
No, that's all right. So I think you brought up something that's kind of interesting to me, which is we had that interview with Robbie Schremp. It's about a week ago, and I haven't released it on podcast yet because it it wasn't game related, but I'm going to release that probably this week for everybody to listen to. And so for those of you watching right now, we had Robbie Shrimp on the Straight Off the Pipe podcast with Mike Dursa. It was interesting to talk to him because here's a guy that you saw him when he played in junior in London, and was an incredible offensive talent, but he was before his time, right? He was Trevor Zegras before Trevor Zegras was in the league, right? Like he was doing these plays, and doing lacrosse style goals and fooling around with the puck long before anybody else was. And we talked to him about doing
like
this.
Exactly. He would do like the helicopter. He would pick it up and do like a helicopter all the way around and score.
That's right.
That was unbelievable.
He was outstanding. And I was asking him. I can't even remember if it was on air or off, but like the way the league is changing, right? And talking about these guys, the Zegras and all these new players that are in the league today that really I think are exciting to watch. But you need new coaching. You need new coaching to go with that. And so I think while Woodcroft comes from sort of old school coaching with McClellan, I think he started to make a name for of his own and bring up his own style. And I think he's not a kid, but I think he's young enough.
He looks young.
Yeah,
he looks younger
young. I think
he looks younger than Bouchard.
40. I think he's 40. He does look younger than Bouchard. I think he's 45 or 46, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to look it up while I'm talking about it. But I think that he's young enough that he's 45. There we go. That he can still adapt to the way the league is played now. Right. And absolutely. I hope you're wrong about Babcock, but a guy like Woodcroft on the team is the kind of guy that I think can adapt to the way the league is played. Back to YouTube, we've got our friends over at the Wildcast podcast are watching in on YouTube. That's they're the Moncton Wildcats. Which, by the way, that was talking about junior hockey. It was at the Moncton versus Halifax game the other night here in Halifax. Really gritty, like the kind of junior game you love to watch. And Moncton's got a pretty big team. Fun to watch. They're not. They started out really well. And they've trailed off a little bit, but anyway, our guys from the Wildcast podcast, if you got a chance to listen to them, said if you had to choose a goalie for trade deadline, Holtby or Varlamov, those are the targets I see Oilers getting because it won't be Fleury. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it won't be Fleury.
No.
I haven't really been following Holtby much at all recently. I'd have to look at his stats and that, but I don't think he's had a lot of success in the playoffs. I'll have to double check. But Varlamov is a guy that I've always kind of liked. He's always been solid in the playoffs from what I can recall. He's got a lot of experience with Colorado and the Islanders. That would be a guy, and again, I'm not really sure what his numbers. I assume he's not having a bad year, but that would be a guy that I would seriously consider, just because it's, again, like Kassian and Smith have really done nothing these last few years, right? You need a guy that's a steady hand, that's been there for a while, not only to give the team confidence, but also give you that what am I looking for? I don't know, just stability for somebody you can trust for 4 rounds. Like there's no questions about it. Like he's the man, he's the horse, and you just let him go, right? And I guess Holtby is probably still capable of that. But you can't, like Koskinen, we're not convinced he can go even 2 rounds, really. And we're not convinced Mike Smith can. They'll probably have to go like this with them. And that's just not ideal, right? You need somebody that has done it before, that proven track record, and continue moving forward. So I'd have to look both of those guys up. It's a great question. But, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to Varlamov at all.
Yeah, Varlamov was a name that I brought up a while back. as a potential target. Holtby's not somebody that I've really thought of, although he is considered, quite high in terms of available goaltenders out there. But, age-wise, I mean, he's, 32-ish.
Yeah.
Right. Decent, though. I think, over 900 this year. Save percentage. Definitely better pedigree than the guys we've got in net right now.
Sure.
I think, look, I look at, maybe their ton has been made, but look at a team like Calgary, and the goaltending they're getting, how big of a difference it makes on your offensive game, right? Like it just, you can afford to put Evan Bouchard out more if you're comfortable in your goaltending, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. People I don't think they think about that, right? Like enough, right? Like they don't realize, I mean, you've played the game, I've played the game. If you've played the game and you've played the game with a good goaltender on your team and you've played the game with a bad goaltender, and I'm a defenseman, so I know this. I play two different styles of game. A bad goaltender, I play the game to limit the amount of shots against the goalie, right? Which also limits my offensive capability. Not that I have a ton. I'm not saying I do, but
you're a stay-at-home defenseman.
That's right.
There's a market for those.
But you play that way. Whereas if you have a good goaltender, you can play a little bit more freewheeling and go. And we've seen that, on games where Koskinen's playing a little bit better than other games, or when you have even Mike Smith when he's on a hot game, the team scores more. Right, because you start to trust the goalie early on, right?
Yeah.
And I think that adds to the tentative nature of this team coming out of the gates, right? As they don't trust and that's been happening now for years, where that first shot or first goal against, but it's just particularly bad this year.
Well, in Varlamov, like last year, I'm just looking at his stats. He had 14 games he played. He had a .929 save percentage in the playoffs for the Islanders. I know he had some stellar games there. And then the year before, he played 20 games, .914 save percentage in the playoffs. He's only 33. He's got a .914 save percentage this year. That's well ahead of the two guys we have in net now. So I think, I don't know what his salary is, but he would definitely be a guy I think you could put in, and you might get another Hudobin type performance, right? A guy that's been there and kind of knows what he's doing, especially recently. That would definitely be a guy.
Yeah, the challenge with Varlamov, he's $5 million, so you've got to give, like, Koskinen's got to go the other way, right? Yeah. Like you can't fit him under the cap. And folks, anybody listening, like if you're hoping Holland's going to make a move on a goalie right away, like it's just not going to happen. There's no cap space to do it. Like he's got to wait. He's got to wait to the deadline. Like unless if he gets rid of Koskinen, right? Like
it's prorated though, right?
Yeah, it is prorated, but it's still
not the full 5.
Yeah, it's not the full 5. But that's why trades are made at the deadline, though, right? Like a lot of it has to do with how the cap space works. And so you've got Varlamov. He's got a modified no trade. I don't know what the deal is on that, but he's got to want to come to Edmonton with that, right? And so,
isn't Sorokin the guy there now?
Sorokin's the guy, yeah. So I mean, he might want out, but at the same time, you got to think that the Islanders. Well, I mean, mind you, they'd be happy to get out of that $5 million because Koskinen's only got the this year left, right? And then he's a UFA, so that might be decent for them. I mean, it might make sense. Holtby is he's got almost no cap hit. He's $2 million cap hit, like for the season.
Oh yeah,
yeah. And I'm just trying to see. Let's just look at the stars here. Go to, by the way, all the stats that I get in terms of salary, everything is from our guy Hart over at Puckpedia, who's put a great website together. So Holtby's $2 million UFA next year, no conditions on his contract. So if Dallas wants to trade him to Edmonton, then there's no problem there. of course,
He looks like he's been in steady decline for the last several years.
Yeah, I mean,
I-
he wouldn't be bad, given the fact that at least you could take him with Varlamov. You have to take him, right? Like you have to take him for another year, right? With Holtby, you take him, and then next year, if you're confident enough, you can go and sign whoever you want, right?
Run Varlamov and Skinner next year.
Yeah. I mean, that's possible. And Smith, who knows? Maybe retire. Maybe he's got some deal for front office job or something. But
move into Tippett's house.
Yeah. I think we'll see better out of Koskinen though with the system Woodcroft's put in place.
And I think just with Tippett gone, because I think he knew that Mike Smith was his guy, right?
Yeah.
Like Tippett gave Mike Smith such a massive amount of rope. I don't think it was any secret. If we knew that Tippett was in love with Mike Smith, then I think obviously all the players know too. And of course they back and support Koskinen. But I think Koskinen feels like he's kind of got a little new lease on life, and he's trying to win over the coaching staff and prove that, now that Smith's BFF is gone as coach, yeah. I can actually, carry it here in the crease. But again, it's definitely a gamble to try and trust him to be the guy to get you through, especially with all those young guys on defense, right? One real quick thing, I would absolutely love to see a guy like, or specifically Josh Manson in Edmonton to play with his dad there on the coaching staff. Because it fills a void. He's such a tough player to play against, a guy you want in the playoffs. And of course his dad's there too. That would be great. Somehow get rid of Tyson Barrie, but probably not going to happen, but I would love to see something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious about Barrie and if the contract's movable or not, right? Like, if there's teams out there that would want him.
Yeah.
I mean, the NHL is full of guys like Holland right now still, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an old boys club.
It is. And so
the whole league is. Yeah.
So you got to figure there's somebody out there that thinks, Barry's the cat's ass.
Well, I mean, I'm not here to rip Tyson Barrie.
Yeah. No, but he is redundant, right? Like he's
redundant,
yeah.
and he costs too much. When you have Bouchard, they're pretty much the same skill sets, same weaknesses. It's kind of the same thing, right? So to have two of those guys on your right side, both playing in your top four usually or whatever. I mean, it's redundant. So obviously you're not going to move Bouchard. So Barry's the obvious guy who probably shouldn't have been signed in the first place, but he would be the guy if you're looking to make a playoff run. Yeah. Somebody's got to go, and you want somebody like Josh Manson to come in and replace him, and then you might have a chance defensively.
Yeah, and defense is in my mind is as important right now as goaltending for this team to go anywhere in the playoffs. They need one more stud D. But I love Nemo coming in and throwing his body around like he is.
He's fearless.
He's just not the answer, right? Like
not yet. Anyways, yeah. He might be down the road. He might be an ideal third pair guy. But I will say though, I think if everybody's healthy, this might be one of the most deepest forward groups in Edmonton. Would you say we've seen in a while? Like with and one real quick thing. Sorry, I've always been a proponent. I think I've probably mentioned many times on your show previously. I've always said to run, if you're going to be a playoff team, you're going to win a Stanley Cup, you got to go McDavid, Draisaitl, Nuge down the middle. Yeah. I've always been big on those three centers. You've got three centers. Why wouldn't you use them? And I love the fact that Woodcroft has been doing that. So if you use those three guys as your centers, and you've got guys like Derek Ryan and Fogle on your third line, and Archie comes back, would you agree that this is one of the deepest from top to bottom, four lines? This is one of the deepest forwards groups they've had in quite some time.
I mean, I used the term underrated already once before tonight, yeah. But I'd say it's underrated, and for the sole fact that this team has been without all of its top nine for most of the season, right? And so and we're still in a playoff spot,
yeah,
right? And so and we had Tippett for a good portion of that, who I think, overutilized McDavid and Draisaitl, underutilized some of that, and everybody. There wasn't an expert analyst in the league that didn't say this was the deepest forward grouping we've had in years. Right at the beginning of the season, everybody talked about it. So where, where did it go? It had to be coaching, right? And now we're seeing it, right? We're seeing, guys like Ryan step up. Like I was excited about Ryan. I wasn't excited. I didn't think he was going into a second line role, but I was excited that he added a dynamic to the team that they haven't had in a little while, right? Like that he was a nice addition. Fogle, love him or hate him. I think he hasn't been given the right chance this year. Like I think he's a good defense or forward depth player, right? Like he's a guy that's played, second, third line for his career so far. That's done well in that role when utilized properly. And I just don't think he's been utilized properly. But he's a guy that like tonight, if you got injuries, you can send him up to the top line for a night, right? With a guy like McDavid. So 100%. I think this team, the forward depth is underrated only because we haven't seen them used properly. But at the same time, nobody's really pointed out other than, the other day I, put a tweet out about it, was that this team has been injured or without players, man games lost most of the season. They're still making it happen a little bit. And they've got shitty goaltending, right? Yeah. So, and I would say they've got subpar defense, right?
Well, for it's amazing to me for Woodcroft to come in with no practice and add Lagesson and Niemelainen and Broberg, run 7 defensemen, and he's got Bouchard there, and then to insert Benson and give McLeod more opportunity. All of that. And he's 7-3 as a coach now since he's done that. Like that goes against everything that Holland believes in, right? Although Holland did acquire Derek Ryan, and he acquired Fogle. I still would prefer to have there. But
me too.
and so in saying that, we're saying this is one of the deepest groups forwards, but they're lacking defensively. I think they've kind of taken a step back there defensively on the defense. But Woodcroft's done a fantastic job considering all that. So now what happens when Keith's back now? I don't know what's going on with Cuckoo or Chris Russell. I don't know if they're even part of the team or what's happening.
Russell just got put on long-term IR.
Did he? Okay.
Knows? He's been out for a little bit. So who knows when? I don't know. Something's obviously bugging him. I think it's recurring. And who is the other guy? Cuckoo. Cuckoo's been out for a while, and I don't know what happened to him, but he's been out for a while. I don't expect him back anytime soon. Maybe he is. I don't even see him on the injury list.
Cody Cece's played well from what I've seen. But if you can send Broberg down and maybe get rid of Lagesson or send him back down and replace Lagesson in the lineup with a guy like Josh Manson, for example, or maybe move on Tyson Barrie. If Woodcroft's able to do this 7-3 and 10 with this group, and there were some tough games in there, then what could he do if you give him just a little bit more, right? We'll see what happens. Like you said, Holland, the thing is, Holland dug this grave. Like, it's his fault. He's traded away a lot of these draft picks. So you've already gone all in. You can't, now's not the time to say, well, I can't trade a draft pick now. I got to win.
Yeah.
You've already dug that. So we're paying you big bucks, or Edmonton's paying you big bucks. You got to go earn it. Tampa traded first-round pick for Barclay Goodrow, and that worked out well. There's been other teams that have thrown first-round picks. Like you said, you can't be half in and half out.
Yeah.
You're all in or you're not.
Yeah.
This is the team you've built. We're in year 3. You can't say, I'm going to play the long game and I'm going to get a draft pick and I'm not going to trade my first-round pick because I want to build for the future. Well, you never play your future anyways. You don't believe in that. So, what are you doing? Stop making excuses. Earn your money. Go out, make this team better, and let's see what they can really do. Because now they finally got a coach that's able to adapt and adjust, like you said, and the team seems to believe in that. So build on that momentum, and see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. All right, I think we exhausted all avenues tonight. It's good to have you back. I mean,
Yeah,
this
it's a
is
great-
I don't
great
normally
chat.
go over an hour, but it was worth it to chat with you. We went an hour and a half tonight.
Wow, that went by fast.
It did go by fast. I'll get you back on if you're open to it.
Yeah,
I suspect you are. Yeah, it's good to have you back. Good to hear about some of the players in the system. I did want to ask you about Shane Wright and some of the prospects coming up. We'll do that maybe we'll just do a prospect episode. The thing is, you know what? I love talking hockey, not just Oilers hockey, but hockey around, juniors, whatever, college, everything like that. But with this schedule, it's like, it's next to
that's
impossible.
crazy.
I've been looking for a time to release this Robbie Shrimp podcast and an off night. But then I've been doing, I end up doing post games. And so the post game gets released as a podcast during the off nights. And I've got no time to release the Robbie Shrimp podcast on a day that, people want to hear from Robbie Shrimp and not about, what the Oilers did last night. Right.
Right.
And so, I'm kind of looking forward to a bit of a break from that when the season's over and hopefully back to normal next season. Because this schedule is hard on me. I can only imagine what it's like for the players. I mean, that's
no doubt.
That's got to be incredible. Anyway, I appreciate you coming back. I've got a little thing that I do now. It's been new this season. I let my guests have the last word. I ask that you stay on after I do the outro screen, and I'll tell you when we're offline and just chat for a minute after. But I give you the last word. I actually shut up. I turn my mic right off, and when you say good night, I hit the good night end screen, and away we're done for the night. So, Sean, take it away. Last word.
All right. Well, I think I'll just recap. Leon Draisaitl is the most underrated player in the league. In my mind, he's the number one best player in the NHL based on his lack of athleticism. He does more to get to that level than anybody else. And Evan Bouchard will be perfectly fine. Just take the bad with the good. There's going to be growing pains. All the great offensive defensemen like Carlson, John Carlson, Eric Carlson, all of them all have kind of had a similar path, and Dobson's doing the same thing. So he's right on path. Don't go down that Jolts path, please. Just support him, stick with him. And Woodcroft, I think he's the man. Let's hope that the Oilers are successful here in the playoffs, and Holland gives him a little bit more help, because I think he is a heck of a coach. With that being said, I miss you all. Love you all. Go Oilers. Good night.